This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, thanks everybody for joining us today. We are joined today by Dr. Rachel Headley of Rose Group Int'l, who is going to be speaking with us about Misfit, what to do when colleagues, clients, and situations don't fit. We're really excited to have her joining us today. So with that, Rachel, I will turn it over to you. Also, just a point of housekeeping so that everybody knows, I'm going to be keeping a check on the chat box. So if you have any questions while Rachel's speaking, please feel free to add those into the chat box, and I'll be keeping an eye on that, and we can address those as they come up. Okay.
Perfect.
Great. So Rachel, if you want to get started and introduce yourself, we are really excited to have you today. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Lindsay. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Dr. Rachel Headley. I have a PhD in Earth Science, which might surprise. It's always a bit surprising because what we do, org development, how to actually get people on the same page, and all of that actually grew out of my time as on aerospace in the aerospace industry. I was an operational science officer for the Landsat satellite program, which is a NASA USGS satellite mission. And in that time, I really was sort of thrown into the deep end about how do you get people on the same page through very complicated, difficult, strange times, which is of course pretty appropriate for the times we find ourselves today. So what we talk about, instead of talking about COVID or the coronavirus pandemic and that sort of thing, what we're doing and what I'm talking about often is what we're seeing happening and what you're feeling in your practices and what you're seeing with your clients, how that actually is a pretty commonplace reaction, how people are seeing the world very differently. People are being stressed out very differently, even though we're all facing very similar challenges. So I wanted to walk through today and just give you a little bit of an insight to allow you to understand exactly what's going on with people, because frankly, as we'll talk about later, it's the people that are the reason we're doing what we're doing, but also sometimes the things that drive us the craziest. So, okay, so if you could go to the next slide, please, Lindsay. So this is a great image, which I love, because what we really talk about are how people are very different. And we talk about it in a professional context, but this is a great sort of pop culture example where we have Aquaman on the left and we have Superman on the right. And you could see this very different demeanor between these two. You have, sort of the chaotic, all black, non-traditional, long hair gentleman on the left, and then you have this very clean-cut, double-breasted suit on the right, and you can tell that he's sneaking up on him, right? And that's why I love this image, because how we react to this environment or this getting sneaked up on really tells a lot about how we work with surprises at work in general. So one of the fun things about this is here we have there's two ways that Superman can react to Aquaman sneaking up on him, and that is either to be really excited and, hey, it's great to see you, and sort of mug with the camera. The other side is sort of, what are you doing here? And I'm busy. Why are you bothering me? And so how people react to unexpected activities or unexpected occurrences, especially perhaps unwelcome ones, really can tell us a lot about how we work, how we react to changes at work, and how we can work better together. So Lindsay, if you want to give me a mouse click. So this is how this turned out. It's the not so excited to see you face, right? And what do we do? And Lindsay, if you can give me one more click on that. And then I use this now. I used this before, but I use this now because this is really how what COVID-19 did to us, right? We were just going along our happy way, and all of a sudden, we get this really unexpected, and in this case, globally, a global perturbation of the economy and everything that we know to be true, how we work, how we think about work, and how we are sometimes actually executing that work and working with our clients. So next slide, please. So let's talk people. So your work follows rules. You have processes and procedures. It's a part of a known and somewhat predictable structure. Sometimes you're in the position to be navigating that structure in a creative way. Sometimes you're in a position to try to alter that structure, but by and large, you know what you're dealing with and how to navigate that. So next mouse click, please. So people, one more time, Lindsay, are none of these things. They rarely feel like they follow rules. They feel like there's no process, and it's like totally unknown. Behaviors and motivations is very individualized, right? But what I'm going to tell you today is I'm going to give you some insights into that's actually not necessarily true. Yes, we're all unique. We all have our own very special talents and blends of experience, but people's reaction to things, how we work together, how we can see each other, how we go through changes is actually quite predictable. And if you can get your hands around that and see some of the triggers, or we even have an assessment that can really get you there right away, then it can really give you a leg up, both over stress and confusion and miscommunication, but also over competition. These days, business travels very quickly. And so if there's an aspect of your work that is where velocity is important, this can really be a game changer for you and your team. Next slide, please. So what are the misfits? So I wanted to start by talking about what are those misfit moments where it can really affect how we work, the success of how we work, and when we feel like things are, walking on eggshells, or there's an elephant in the room, or there's unspoken conversations. So if I can get a click from you, Lindsay. So from a chaos perspective, we look at three main areas of what creates misfit feelings or tension in the workplace and teams, or between clients and consultants, or in your case, legal services. We have change agents versus change resistors. That's a big one. Next click, please. And so from the change resistor side, so if I'm focused and I'm focused on my work, other people feel scattered. So that's kind of a chaos thing. We have people that love feeling scattered and running around and having new things happen all the time, love it when something strange walks in their door. And we have other folks who love to be focused. They like to know what their day looks like, and that's how they thrive. Okay, the next click. There we go, 2 is great. Team versus self. So if a team person feels often like self-driven people are selfish. So this is kind of a two-way street. So if I'm a team person, I feel like there's selfish people in the world. If you are a self-driven person, you often feel like you're the only logical human in the world, and everyone else is like strangely needy and strangely caring about other people, what other people need, instead of just doing the thing that's clearly the right thing to do. Okay, next. Okay, change is really opportune. Like when we have a change like that, the guy jumping on the back of the other guy, we have opportunity, people that see opportunity in change, and then people that see danger in change. And so we see that right now writ large with the economic downturn, or the economic challenges. I'm not sure downturn is a long enough term, or we haven't gone through it long enough to call it that. But so some people are seeing opportunity in the market, for example, and other people see really danger signs in the market. We see that from economists across the board. Some people are like optimistic, and some people are like end of the world. And so these are very two opposing viewpoints that we see every single day in the news. Okay, next click. And then there's from a change perspective, you have people that always feel like they're chasing the next shiny object, and you have people that are really reliable and steadfast, and they like to stick with the things that are known and they know they can be successful with. So you can see that we have on all of these sort of 6 viewpoints that there are conflicting views on how to see the world, how to interact with the world, and how to basically what's valuable, right? Because a lot of times the logical person feels like a needy person it's not as valuable to have this needy feeling about people, right? Or if you're focused, you feel like someone who's scattered is scattered. It's kind of a negative connotation. Whereas the scattered person feels like the focused person might be too entrenched and not creative enough. So we really start talking with very negative words about each other's perspective. And so a lot of times that's due to a lack of understanding and a lack of really clarity around how we can lean on each other and leverage each other's skill sets. And so that's the next thing we're going to talk about. So if we could go to the next slide. This is an example of a legal structure that I grabbed off of the internet somewhere. Most Law is the place I stole it. And not because it's good or bad, it's just because I wanted to demonstrate, as we all know, law firms can be very small or can be very complicated depending on their size, their location, and what focus they have on their practice. And in this case, this just shows sort of legal versus the non-legal side of the house. And I'm sure you can all start thinking about what are the offices that seem to be at odds, or who are the people that seem to stir trouble or stress other people out, and where are they in the org chart? Because frankly, as you know, if let's say the non-legal side of the house, let's say that office manager is someone who just stresses everybody out on the legal side, then that might destroy the entire energy, culture, attitude of the entire firm, right? Because you have somebody that's sort of in there always sort of creating tension. And so what we want to do is give you the framework and the insight to figure out how to actually take that office manager, figure out what exactly he or she is doing that, or what he or she perspective is, her or his perspective is, and figure out how to actually use that to leverage a better relationship, a better firm. Another angle, of course, always, especially with legal services, financial services, is how do we connect to our clients and what's going on with the folks in the room who are actually acting strange, or we don't understand their behavior. And that's one of the really key things that this framework is going to help you understand, is people's behavior and what's going on with them. Because often it's, as I mentioned in the last slide, it can feel like quite a mystery. Okay, next slide, please. So this is what I want you to think about for the next few minutes. So what we have here, and I'm sorry, because I am not sharing, I can't show you what I'm pointing at, so we'll just have to wing it. So we have, what I really want you to look at past the icons is the actual, thank you, Lindsay, she's got it out there, the actual scatter plot. So we have that plus in the middle, we have chaos at the top and order at the bottom. We have team on the left and self on the right. So what we really have in the middle, the essence of this graphic, is a mathematical scatter plot where we're going to show you the data about people, and how once you have that data in your hand, you can actually start understanding the behavior, motivation, how people interact, how you can meet them where they are and leverage their gifts, and how you can maybe, you might be at odds with people by accident, and how to kind of circumnavigate that. So it's incredibly powerful once we understand how the dynamic works. So when we talk about, we'll talk about fixers first. Fixers are chaos driven, or sorry, they're chaos tolerant. So fixers actually like crazy schedules, talking to a group I hadn't had a chance to meet. Lindsay and I connected a couple weeks ago, and we had a lot of synergy about what was going on right now, and I was excited to talk to you, although I don't know any of you personally. So that is a chaotic kind of inclination. Team driven means that I love to build consensus. I love to create change for the benefit of humanity. I like to feel like there's a hero archetype where you get to come in and sort of save the day. That's kind of what fixers love to do. Independents, on the other hand, they love chaos. They like that. They're kind of the original disruptors. They love new ideas, new processes, trying something new, totally different than anything they've done before. and they're much more self-driven. So which that means is that sort of frees them from feeling like, well, somebody might not like this, or this might not work for the team. It's much more about this is the right thing to do, and everyone will get on board eventually. There's just not that desire for consensus building before decision making happens. Stabilizers on the bottom left, those folks prefer order. So the bottom half prefers order, much more order tolerant. If I had to do the same thing every day, I would not stay in that role very long. I like a lot of variability. So order tolerant people really actually thrive in that routine, steadfast predictability. They tend to be experts in what they do because they can stay focused. I can be focused, but not for very long, or not for long enough, certainly, as a stabilizer would. I can do that kind of work. Of course, we can all do the things that need doing, but stabilizers are really the ones that are locked into both the social structure of the firm and also the work that needs doing on the schedule that it needs doing. They're the folks that will absolutely just work tirelessly to achieve a goal that they're aware of and they know. But if you walk into their office and throw something new on their desk, that might send them into a bit of a tailspin. Organizers are, we see a lot of organizers that are lawyers. They're very order tolerant. They're self-driven, so they're fine working on their own. A lot of partner structures we see have a lot of organizers in them because they have their specialty, their book, and they really focus on what they're interested in. Yeah, they're part of the firm generally, and they value that, but they're really self-driven in that way. The interesting thing about organizers is they tend to really, they actually create order out of chaos, which totally makes sense for a lot of different legal aspects, as well as financial services. We see this quite a bit, where you go in and you take kind of a mess, you sort through the mess, and then you actually come up with the nuggets of either important information or strategies out of all of this crazy stuff that's going on, especially when you can apply your legal mind and your legal experience, because of course you're getting to see that data in information in a slightly different way, which allows you to create creative problem solving, use your logic, and but you have to kind of sort through all of this crazy stuff that other people bring to the table. So it's actually, we see a lot of legal and financial services folks in this organizer bucket. So the fascinating thing though to remember is that each organization has its own sort of grouping. It's almost like flocks of birds that you see flying. We literally see groupings of different organizations depending on, as you know, the style of company, the style of firm. Is it a corporate firm? Is it a family services practice? Like, really depends on each one of those firms is very different, even though they're all practicing law. So it's really cool, frankly, and so insightful and powerful to see how different firms look on this trade space. So we can go to the next slide. I have a couple examples for you. So here's a legal services group. This is actually I think this is their corporate, like their staff that does sort of legal, tax work. I don't know, this is not my personal client. This is my COO's client, so I don't know them as well. But this is our Helix assessment. So what we do is we look at each one of these individuals takes an assessment, because that we measure your chaos tolerance, your need for team, and then we plot you on this trade space. So cool thing is that what we can see here is we have a grouping of organizers in the bottom right-hand corner, but we also see we have some kind of split out people up in the fixer side of the upper left, and we have one lone, well, not quite one lone, but we have Sarah kind of out on her own. So what was going on in this firm is we had the more of the staff level folks in the bottom right, and they're doing a lot of the day in, day out work. Nina is actually a partner, youngest partner in the firm's history. She's much more chaotic than the average person in the firm, but that has allowed her to get a big book, have a lot of interesting and new clients to the firm, and that's really made her quite successful. The challenges, though, is they started having people on the team, the staff, they started having some turnover, which was pretty unusual for the firm, and they couldn't really figure out what was going on. Well, Nina thought it was Sarah. So Sarah is very different than Nina. Sarah is as a stabilizer, she's very socially interwoven into the firm. She's been there for a very long time. I think 21. I think 21 now. I think it was 18 when we started working with this client. I think she's at 21 years now. And she is very much she will fight for the staff. She she will work. She is one of these women that works 80-hour weeks because she knows her clients need her. And Nina is much more chaotic. She's more likely to take a Friday afternoon off to go golf or go to happy hour. And so Nina and Sarah are very different. And in the office, they can really be at loggerheads about how to do things, what the priorities are. Do you fire clients? Nina is much more likely to fire a client who's not meeting their firm's requirements as far as hours, finances, whatever that might be, or maybe they're just a difficult client. Nina's much more likely to release that client. Sarah is much more likely to fight for that client. So it's really interesting, just day-to-day decision making. They are at loggerheads often, or odds. So what happened was we started seeing some turnover, and they weren't so Nina was sure it was Sarah, because Sarah was sort of likes to overwork people a little bit, and, like, in Nina's perspective, micromanage. So what was happening, though, was when I interviewed all of these staff, they actually said that the most stressful thing about their job was Nina, because Nina is chaotic. She likes to change things up. She might have one process with one client and then change it up with a different client, because, of course, Nina wants to serve the client. She's less worried about the process. And but some people, a lot of organizers love that process and lean into it. So that was actually stressing them out. And so between Nina, who was changing things all the time, and Sarah, who was trying to kind of micromanage things in their mind, they were like, I'm out of here, I'm over it. And so when I shared this with Nina, she was really horrified that her approach was actually driving people away, and she didn't even realize it. And so it's not that I don't want Nina to change who she is. That's what made her successful. That's what makes her who she is, and a value to the firm. But how she interacts with her staff, or with the staff, I should say, she just needed to take a beat and kind of step back and think about where are they at, the kinds of people they are, and how do they work as a team, and how does she interact with them best. So we actually dropped turnover, which had gotten up to almost 20%, down to 0 for over a year. I think it was 13 months, and then someone had a child and decided to be a stay-at-home parent for a while. So it's just such an interesting and powerful insight into your team to understand how they're reacting to change. Let's go to the next one, Lindsay. So here's a business development arm of a large firm. And what we have here is, in the upper right-hand corner, is our independents. Those are the folks that are self-driven, they're chaos tolerant. They're the ones that are going out and actually connecting with new clients, developing those relationships to bring on large clients into the firm. So interesting, because of course we didn't know this about them before we worked with them as an organization. And here they are almost split out by role. So one thing a lot of people always ask is, well, is there the right person for the right kind of role? In this case, we see that they do tend to group. So the folks in the upper right, those are the out doing the networking events, doing the calling, trying to develop the business of the firm. And then on the left-hand side, the Barbara, Corinne, and Becky, they're the folks that are kind of doing the HR stuff, the coordinating events and who needs to be where, and they're much more on the how do we get people together and make it a good experience group, and then kind of the events group. And then on the bottom, these are the data. These are the data folks who are studying data, getting the feedback in from the exterior, like Headley and Arthur up there, who are, doing their magic, being all crazy and chaotic in the community. And then they're actually recording the data, figuring out appointments, who's talked to who last. And so they're much more about actually kind of keeping the wheels on a very process-oriented basis. Now, you can imagine that the other secret that I want to make sure that I share with you today is the chaos people, if they were cut out on their own and didn't have the order-tolerant people down below, they would maybe great at their jobs, but they would lose a lot of opportunities. They would not be consistent in communication. It's just not their zone of genius. And so on the other side of the house, the folks that are just interested in the process and making sure things get done and keeping schedules and milestones, those folks could be very successful on their own too. But if they're all alone without interacting with any chaos people, they tend to get very process heavy, very sometimes bureaucratic, very administrative, certainly. And so you can see that it's critically important for chaos people and order tolerant people to actually work together, because you want someone that's pulling the firm forward, that's being crazy and visionary perhaps, but you also need someone who actually makes sure the work's getting done, right? And so it's such a critical concept to understand, because of course critically important to work together and find a way to work together, but at the very same time, those are the people that drive us the craziest. They're the people that you, like I have a story, I have a Forbes article that just came out this week, and I tell the story about what a gentleman I call the envelope man. So I'm chaos tolerant. See where Mike is there in the middle at the top. I'm above him, so I'm very chaos tolerant. And I was working with a gentleman who was probably down by Sharon at the bottom there. And we were actually sending out a physical thing, a letter. It wasn't a letter, it was like some kind of card for an event, annual sort of client event. And we needed to go in an envelope. And I didn't care what the envelope was. I didn't care what color the envelope was. I didn't care what size it was. I didn't care if it went in the sleeve. I didn't care. Didn't care if it was lined. I wanted him to please just make it cool and go do the things. But he physically could not see his way to just doing that on his own. He needed to understand what my view and vision of success looked like to make sure that he did it well, and it maybe even exceeded what I was looking for. And so I could have said, no, go figure it out. And I probably would have when I was younger. But I had to sit down with him and actually walk through what I wanted this to look like. And it only took like 15 minutes. Frankly, it was very frustrating in the beginning, because I was like, I have things to do. Go figure it out. You're brilliant, fully formed, very smart person. Go figure this out. But there are people that need, the chaos people in the world need to work with the order tolerant people in the world and meet them halfway. Now, I'm sure that my pushing the envelope man, as I call him, he was probably uncomfortable with the amount of flexibility I wanted to give him, even after we had the conversation. So it's almost like you each have to have a little bit of discomfort and kind of meet each other in the middle. Because frankly, if I wouldn't have taken the time to work with him, he would have just not done it probably, or had done it in a way and been like so overwhelmingly stressed that why would I put one of my staff members through that? And then the other side of it is he could have done it, and then maybe I wouldn't have liked it, and then I would have yelled at him, and then that's kind of, it's very hard wouldn't have yelled at him, but that's what he was afraid of. And so what if that's the right thing or the wrong thing? It doesn't really matter. It's what he feels and what I feel. So how do we actually find a way to meet in the middle? Now that's a one-on-one example, and we see that a lot in clients. I'm going to talk for just a moment in a second about change and how the pandemic change has been insane, but also how to understand how people are dealing with change. Because I think you guys tend to, whether it's a merger and acquisition, whether it's a divestiture or a downturn or whatever it might be, it's really important to understand what your clients are actually processing through. Even the most sophisticated client you might have goes through these processes. So if we could go to the next slide, please. I'm going to, this is the formatting strange here, but basically to summarize, I just have a couple slides in here that I want to touch on for a second so that they're in the recording, but I'll go by very quickly. So fixers need a mission, independence, need freedom. And I think the top of that, oh no, it's not cut off yet. Okay, the stabilizers need people. They love that consistency and that order, and organizers want a reason, really logic driven. So let's go to the next slide. So the things that make other people crazy, and think about where you are and what you're thinking about. So fixers, the things that make us crazy is isolation and routine. So you can imagine that as a fixer, pandemic, isolation, and lockdown was could have been very crippling for me. I know this about myself, and we train it and work with it day in, day out. It's not that we are perfect at it, but at least I'm aware and I can take steps to mitigate that. We had a lot. I made sure to stay connected and to find ways to still have some crazy chaos in my life. Independence, they really loathe the restrictions of any kind. So this kind of lockdown, you can't go out, that sort of advice is really quite frustrating for them. Stabilizers really don't like uncertainty in all the ways. They like predictability. That's kind of their stabilizers, right? So the uncertainty about, like, a lot of stabilizers, when they were told, let's go home and work, we're going to stay working from home for the foreseeable future, we'll figure out what happens next, they actually thrived in many ways. Even though the uncertainty about the pandemic is big, they knew what was expected from them, and that was going to be the routine. So actually they were able to adjust decently quickly to that, and which was really, actually it was kind of a strange surprise, because we thought, here we have this huge pandemic uncertainty, but actually they really liked the rule. So they respond well to rules. So before, when it was, well, maybe go out or maybe don't, or just, and now that it's kind of maybe social distant, but maybe open, now you're seeing those stabilizers get anxious again, because they're not sure what the right rule is to follow. And that can make them very stressed out. So they don't like uncertainty. And then organizers don't like the lack of logic. And frankly, oversharing. A lot of our meetings during the pandemic, we've been like, how are you doing? What kind of dog do you have? And all that kind of stuff. And a lot of organizers are like, all right, I have things to do. Or they feel like they're being micromanaged because they're checking in on them all the time. You are a minority. Most people want to be checked in more than they're getting checked in on. So just some insights into the crazy making of different types. Okay, next, please. So the strategies, of course, are sort of the corollary to that. So fixers want more interaction. Give them more interaction. You might have family members that feel this way. Maybe you do. Maybe you have colleagues. They need more interaction. Find ways to give it to them, or figure out ways to reach out, interact through the window, or it depends on where you are, geography. Some of us are more open than others, so there's opportunities to now connect in more personal ways. Independence really, they kind of take off when intellectually. So in this kind of environment where they're not really sure what's going to happen next, and it's you can kind of do maybe anything in their mind, they'll be chasing new things and new challenges, and you might actually have to help them stay focused on what is happening right now with the firm. Stabilizers, they like a plan and a team. Really love to understand who they're reacting to. So assign them individuals to stay in touch with if you need to, or have your have the staff, whoever's managing your staff, sort of, you know, create pods where they can kind of talk to each other more often. And this is true even without the pandemic. If we were just 6 months ago, what we find is stabilizers who feel isolated actually struggle quite a bit, and their behaviors come out strange. And same with fixers. Fixers that are isolated also have that same reaction. Organizers, they like logic and milestones. Tell me what I need to do when, and they're pretty happy. They are self-driven, so they tend to not need a lot of interaction. The big challenge for organizers is when they are required to work in a big team environment, and then they often feel like they're wasting time, or things aren't, they could be using their time in better ways. So next slide, please. So this is I don't know if you guys know the heart and brain cartoon, but it's basically describing that tension of, you know, sort of order versus chaos, right? It's that tension of, you know, can't you enjoy what you have before you run off to the next thing? And the heart's already running off to the next thing. So this is a very common tension we see in the workplace. And one of the things we need to remember, so whether it's pandemic writ large, or whether it's at our firm and we're perhaps bringing on a new partner, we're perhaps retiring some folks, maybe we're restructuring something internally, maybe we're just bringing on a big new client. Any one of those things actually creates a transition. And it's so fascinating, because when you ask people to take that on, this is what it looks like. So let's go to the next slide. I just have 1 or 2 more slides for you. So this is actually what it looks like. So let's say you're going along your life and the pandemic hits, or the stay-at-home order hits, or perhaps in a non-pandemic world, it's just you are you have some of your senior partners are retiring out, and you're changing leadership structure. You create this mess. So every line is a different one of our different types, and fixers and independents, you can see, are wildly swinging energetically. They are excited about change, but then they don't like it for some reason, or they try something and it doesn't work, or someone's upset, or they try this thing. And so it's really quite chaotic for the fixers and the independents in a change model. And a lot of them are like, wow, this change stuff is great, because they really love it. But then you have the organizers and the stabilizers, and you can see their energy levels really sink. Stabilizers are very, very long on the resistance front. Not because they're jerks, just because that's how they're wired. They prefer routine and stability. And so the trick is, if you don't understand that this is what you're asking your people to go through, you really can't manage it. You get half the people, they're like, wow, this change is great, I love it. The other half of people saying, I hate this more than life, I guess I'll just gut it out. That is just not, you are missing an opportunity to have your people work together toward a new future in a way that everyone can thrive and grow. And man, if you get to that point, it is an incredible moment. I've had an opportunity to work in a team like that, and it is something I'm always striving for all of my clients to achieve, because it is an unbelievably fantastic place, both from a financial perspective for your organization, and for the energy and happiness of going to work every day, the culture of your business. So this is the crazy stuff. Next slide, Lindsay, please. So this is what you can achieve if you know about this and can plan for it. So you still have the fixers and the same scale. So you still have the fixers and the independents getting to be a little creative, getting to take, getting excited about that change, but you have much lower declines in the stabilizer and organizer line. So you can see that and actually the chaos part, the up and down energetic, we call that the innovation phase. So the innovation phase actually overlaps on 3 of the 4 types then, and that's when real magic starts to happen, because you can all sort of start coalescing around this shared vision. The stabilizers are often the last to the party, but they don't really like craziness anyway. So what they really want is to understand what the future looks like, and then they'll just get there. So not that they're not creative in their own way, they just don't want any of this, well, we'll figure it out as we go, or we'll, you know, like, trust us, it'll be fine. That makes them crazy. So it's really quite amazing to go from that previous slide to this one because it feels much more controlled. Everyone kind of understands where everyone's at. Behaviors don't get crazy. You understand their motivations and that sort of thing. So that's the power of moving through one of these sort of, whether it's the pandemic or any other transition that you have, knowing this, having this stuff in your back pocket. All right, next slide, please. So now what? What is the next? What do you do with this, what I feel is very yummy and exciting stuff to have at hand? So assess your people, understand who you have, how they react to change. Once you know where they are in that scatter plot, you know, oh, well, I know I can help you understand, but you will also over time really be able to get good at, you know, from a strategic perspective, adjust your processes and procedures to better ensure alignment and better communication and better energy in the office, and then refine as needed. So in a strategic perspective, that long-term big picture, you know, have your people are who are your company, and understanding how they work and helping them actually perform better is like incredibly beneficial for your firm. Tactically, we use these strategies with every client and colleague to reduce friction, increase the velocity of your schedule if that's part of what you know, makes you successful, and to less stress and have more enjoyment. And so yes, we really focus on the business aspects of this. You know, increasing energy increases productivity of your people, which increases your bottom line because you don't have as much cost in poor engagement. I mean, there are lots of numbers that can go in here, but also at the end of the day is you walk into the office and are excited to see people there, and are your clients greeted in a way that you want them to be greeted and welcomed, and do you have that client perspective all the time where everyone feels important and valued, both your staff and the people walking in the door. And so I think that's it. I think my contact information is here if you would like to reach out. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer them. I know this is super fast. It's you know, it's something that we work with clients over long periods of time mostly, but it's always fun to give you a taste of what's possible.
That was awesome, Rachel. Thank you so much.
Oh,
I will give everybody a minute or two to enter any questions. Also, you can unmute yourselves at this point if you wanted to ask your questions on audio. We'll see if anybody has any. But that was really great. And I'll also share the recording of this with everybody. And if you had any follow-up questions that you wanted to ask Rachel privately, I'll be sharing your contact information with everybody in the follow-up email as well.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, great question. Anybody?
No, I was just saying thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, James.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. I will let you get back to your days. And thanks so much, Rachel. And we will be back soon with our next webinar.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.